enough yesterday.
Well, Mary may want to pause that recording. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming here on a Friday afternoon. Talk about natural hazards mitigation and mitigation actions so we can continue the work of the winnowing. I'm Matt Kroll, Planning Services Division Manager here at the Department of Land Conservation Development. And joining a couple of our colleagues here, we've had a busy week. We had a lot of events going on and people in and out with some illness. So we are moving ahead even as we deal with those, overcome that. To start off with, if people want to come on and say hi, that's always nice too. But also if people could put their name and affiliation in the chat, and that way it makes it easy for us to keep track of who we have at these when we're reporting out at the end of this process, who is engaged in these meetings. And then we'll try to use the chat mostly for that kind of either introductions, technical. If you have troubleshooting, if your microphone isn't working, certainly let us know in the chat, or if you need to share a link. But as far as most of the discussion, we don't have that many people here today. I think it's a good sized group, so we can just speak. Just go ahead and come off mute, turn your camera on and speak up whenever you're ready to. If you want to use the raise hand feature, that's good too. I'll try to call on people, especially if we have multiple people all at the same time, but don't feel like you have to do that. It is probably going to be helpful for you if you have downloaded the criteria and goals from the website, because that will be referring to that. And let me see if I can put that in the chat. There's a link to that. So anything else we need to cover as far as general getting started? Or are we ready to jump in? I'll just review what it is we're going to try to do today. We're going to continue reviewing a set of the mitigation actions that came from the 2020 plan. They've been filtered and updated some, but this is mostly the list. We're working on the existing list, the current list. We'll pick up where we left off. Then we'll have a chance to talk about some of the newly proposed mitigation actions, and hopefully have the person, whoever proposed them, speak about them and look at those as we evaluate them through the same lens of the criteria and goals. And then have some time at the end to nominate and review anything else out there. I mean, the goal here is to try to get as many of these good mitigation action items as we can in there. So let's pick up where we left off on the current actions. To make things a little faster, what we've done at the DLCD staff, we have gone through and marked the boxes based on our initial take on this. This is not a final answer by any means. But what I intend to do is step through these pretty quickly. Speak up. Just speak up if any of you want to talk about them. If you have some questions about whether it meets any of these criteria or whether there's just some interesting things to talk about. If I go too fast, don't hesitate to go back and say, hey, we need to step back an item or two. And then some of them, we have highlighted some purple on there where we're going to target some discussion there, things where we're not quite sure about. And I think that we'll try to spend more of our time there and less of our time just on each one of them. So
how are we on the Zoom? Does this look okay for folks? It's a very wide document.
Okay for me. Is anybody else? Speak up if it's too small, the font.
Okay.
You're on mute, Marion. Still seems to be on mute. I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. The purple, I think, are highlighting places that the action we thought wouldn't meet, and so that action would fall out unless we discuss a way that it would meet.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good clarification. We had some questions about those, so we need to resolve that. Either to say, yep, we are going to say it meets it, or no, in which case it would be winnowed out. All right. Picking up then on, is the font okay? If anybody had any trouble with the font size? And you can also access this yourself on Box, so you can read it there if you want to be scrolling around or zooming. Number 18, complete a hazard mitigation policy legislative needs assessment. Pretty sure this would be interagency. We need to find out anybody, but it
Okay.
sounds like it looks like a good one. There is no number 19. It was probably something that was completed already, so it came off this list, it had been filtered. So number 20, establish formal and official authority for the state NHMP. Again, this is something our initial take meets everything, so we'd keep it in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
21. Now this is one where we have some questions. Review and adjust state NHMP membership.
I didn't think that this fulfilled any of our mitigation goals.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it really needed to be in here.
I agree. It sounds more like a task for OEM than it does a mitigation action.
The note there sort of it is ongoing. I mean, it's something that when you have a body like an HMT, it's always, and so unless we have some reason that we believe that there's something significantly wrong about the membership right now that we're trying to correct.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm not hearing that or seeing that. All right. That one will move to the ongoing or just become part of OEM's routine operations, either way, however the staff at OEM would prefer to see it listed, I think. 22, provide technical assistance to most vulnerable jurisdictions. Okay, the question here is the funding source. But while we don't have an exact source outlined right now, it's not an unreasonable thing that we're doing. The state does provide technical assistance in a lot of ways.
Okay.
We might want to put in the notes that the risk assessment will identify those most vulnerable areas.
Helpful, thank you. Number 23. Complete comprehensive multi-hazard and climate change vulnerability assessments. Feels like a fair amount of this is done. Or is this talking about local assessments?
What is that talking about?
This looks a lot like the project that we're wrapping up right now that we're doing.
Does
I
Maybe
nominate
Mark is complete.
Mark is complete. Obviously, the risk assessment will continue to evolve over time, but we've made a major step forward.
Mm-hmm.
24, lifeline backbones for 11 coastal communities with hospitals. That sure seems to meet all the criteria.
Okay.
25, climate change adaptation policies and priorities.
I just had one note here of there's an incomplete sentence. I'm not quite sure where we were going with that.
Oh, okay.
And this is something that has been done with the climate change vulnerability or no, climate change adaptation framework that Chris has put together.
Well, Chris, do you want
yes.
to?
Okay, so the leadership structure part has not happened. That was one of our goals that we're still looking for.
Well, we don't have to do it right now, live editing here, but if Chris, you can adjust the description of this to reflect what has been done and what still needs to be done and fix up whatever that sentence was. All right. Number 26, then we need to talk about request, compile seismic and flood information for personnel occupied buildings from other agencies. Oh, is this all about state agencies?
Hey, Hey Matt, it's Deanna. How do we get the information for the state-owned buildings? How do we get that data?
Okay, so I can address that briefly.
Okay.
As part of our risk assessment, we are identifying the top 10 areas that are vulnerable to flood from a hazard and social standpoint. And we will be supplying lists of state-owned buildings and critical facilities located in those areas. So you don't have to look at all thousands of the buildings in the state inventory, just the ones that are flood vulnerable.
Gotcha. Thank
And
you.
then,
How we
and
get
then,
that
so then,
data? I
well,
think
that will involve some further investigation, but the point is we don't have to download massive databases. You could actually go visit the sites.
Wouldn't this
The
coincide,
base,
wouldn't this
good.
coincide with number 22?
Which one is, can we,
Coastal hospitals,
oh,
making sure the backbone.
they're related, but most hospitals are not state-owned buildings.
yeah, this came from this would be implementation of a report that was done by Dogami several years ago, identifying potential islands that tsunamis would cause and the issues with respect to hospitals, and that people could not get to them, bridges would be down, the hospitals would need some seismic
So that's what 22 is all about, right?
yeah.
Okay. So for 26, and there's a purple, which category? That must be criteria 3?
Cost effective.
Cost effective, okay.
And since it says request and compile seismic and flood information for personnel occupied buildings from other agencies, and we don't have identified here which agency would have been the lead on that, it would be either DAS or Dogami or potentially both. So we can think about it that way.
Well, I think Nancy, go ahead.
Just a quick statement. So some of our hatcheries are in some nasty flood zones and we've had really bad issues with it. We've also done seismic assessments on a lot of our hatcheries, which were built in like the 40s. So I think once you've pre-identified the boundaries of those 10 high priority areas, you can reach out to a general list of agencies and say, hey, do any of you guys have state-owned buildings, with that are affected, and let us know.
That is a wonderful
sense
idea. Thank you.
The hatcheries would be located next to rivers.
Yeah.
All right, did that cover it, Nancy?
Yes.
All right, Reed.
Hi, I'm here as a Dogami representative.
Excellent.
I think that this is definitely something on the seismic hazard side that's in the realm of what we do. Although at this point, I don't think we have an up-to-date set of information that could be used to identify the most vulnerable buildings, like I think this task relates to. So it's definitely something that could be done, but it probably would require some funding and a dedicated project to accomplish that. So I don't know if that's helpful information right now, but that's my contribution.
It sounds like you're advocating that we want to keep that in there.
Yeah, I think it's I think that would make sense.
Let's go ahead and mark that it would be a cost effective, and we can keep that in there. Tracy?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to add on just to the piece about the state-owned facilities. The DAS facilities team can provide a list of all state-owned and leased property, or at least they've been able to do that in the past for other projects I've been on, and that might help target that outreach that Nancy suggested. So just kind of throwing that out there, that including them in that discussion might be a good idea, and then helping target that a little bit more, so it's not just outreach to whatever agencies might pop up.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Chris.
No, we have that list from DAS, so, but it may not include things like fisheries or, I don't know, equipment staging areas, things like that.
that sounds like some useful advice as we're moving on with that one. I think we're ready to move on to the next items, but if I'm wrong, let me know. Number 27, prioritize resilience activities in most vulnerable jurisdictions for the hazards to which they're most vulnerable.
Mm,
Somebody offered a comment for us.
this is different. Mm-hmm. I think it's a decent critique, because this action really speaks more to what are the criteria that we use to prioritize jurisdictions for grant funding. And we've already done that as a part of the NHMP process.
Well, we're almost done with it. We'll have one more meeting on it.
Okay.
Question in my mind is, does this need to remain as it's a good principle to be prioritizing resilience in the most vulnerable, but is it an action that we would really keep on here as this would be a specific project that someone would do in the next 5 years?
And the risk assessment it's intended to do exactly that, to
Okay.
tell you where the vulnerable areas are so that we can then prioritize actions there.
Right.
It's part of the criteria for selecting a project.
Murph?
If we're gonna keep identifying these hazards as far as hazard maps, flood maps, this definitely is a priority. Should be paying attention to this.
Okay. Yeah, I think this would not be a mitigation action, but it would be part of the prioritization piece.
It's a
Makes sense to me.
prioritization criteria.
Right.
You certainly don't want anyone thinking I'm saying don't prioritize activities in vulnerable jurisdictions. I'm not saying that at all, but this doesn't feel like it's a specific project. It's a
No.
broad principle that we'll use.
Right.
Okay.
28, providing outreach to some of these same most vulnerable jurisdictions and tribal governments to help understand hazards. We'll want to change the word citizen probably to residents. Understand hazards and how to better prepare for the hazard events.
No comment?
I'm still reading.
Thank you to people who went online and left comments for us. It's very helpful. So the question is this useful as a standalone, or would it just be better to put it as part of the technical assistance? It is rather broad. It doesn't say which jurisdictions, which hazards. Well, I guess the description has some.
So it's
Go ahead,
written
Murph,
a
just
little
jump
bit.
in.
It's written a little strangely. Sorry, go ahead, Murph.
Thank you. Just this comes to mind. We had a Mount Hood Corridor Wildfire Partnership meeting this week, and chat is on how vulnerable the population is up here due to lack of communication. So you know, if we have medical needs up here, we have a vulnerable population. If there is not a way to communicate, when we have a public safety power shutoff, we lose all communication. So this is, we need to prioritize how are we going to communicate during these types of public safety issues. And should this be moved to priority is what I'm asking. As development keeps continuing and tourism increases, we have a very vulnerable population for the areas that have been identified in my area anyway, in the Mount Hood corridor.
Those are some important thoughts. I think this one is really talking about this outreach that we do to people before the disaster. This is not really about the communications or notification happens during a disaster. It's to help get people.
Hold that thought, Murph. I think you might want to add a new mitigation action to discuss later on.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
But this one, I'm confused about whether this is, that the state would be reaching out to the most vulnerable jurisdictions and providing what they need for themselves to get the word out, or we would be doing it for them. It says provide outreach to most vulnerable jurisdictions and tribal governments. It doesn't say provide outreach to the residents, that we're trying to help the governments help the residents. Is that right here?
Got it.
Makes most sense, but it's not clear. So let's rewrite it that the state provides assistance to the most vulnerable jurisdictions so that they can inform their residents.
There you go.
You might want to, if you're going to rewrite it, also say to target areas or something like that to reflect that we are prioritizing areas in the risk assessment.
The most vulnerable jurisdictions
Yes,
as identified in the risk assessment.
as identified in this is right.
We're talking faster than Trisha can type. Thank you for trying to keep up with us, Trisha.
Sorry.
And again, we'll come back and work this. We don't need to get the whole group to go through the details of this here. Try to write it all.
Does that seem right? And then Chris, you had a comment about the risk assessment piece in here.
I'll go back and we can talk about it later.
Okay.
All right, moving on. 29. Got support. Identify funding to support various public transportation providers and local jurisdictions to conduct comprehensive vulnerability assessments.
Great idea.
And a useful comment there. Okay. 31. Again, anybody jump in if at any point if there's something your question or would like to discuss, but otherwise we'll keep moving. Conduct critical infrastructure vulnerability analysis, especially in those most vulnerable jurisdictions.
Yeah.
32.
Me.
Activate the climate change adaptation work group. Chris, do you want to tell us, is that the group that already exists or is there something new and different?
No, this is the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Framework
So
implementation team.
Yeah.
this could be checked off the list.
Yes,
Right.
it can be checked off the list.
Let's say it's activated. Not that the work of climate adaptation is done, certainly, but
No, but the work group's been activated.
all right. It's nice to have a few of them. We can do that. Establish multi-agency climate change adaptation leadership structure. But this is the part, Chris, you tell us is not there yet, right?
Right, but that seems like a duplication of something that was
It is.
earlier.
It is.
Okay, so let's get rid of one of them.
The one above.
Okay, that sounds good.
Well, we already said 32 we're saying is complete, but 34 still has to do with the leadership structure.
The multi-agency leadership structure.
The work group is ad hoc. It doesn't have like a charter and
Right.
We'll keep-
executive.
for now, we're going to keep 34, but if you determine that it really does duplicate the one that we talked about earlier, we can drop one or the other.
I think what we
Yeah.
were going to do for the earlier one is we were going to keep the part about the leadership structure and delete the rest. So I think now we can just keep this because that's the leadership structure and delete the whole earlier one, but I don't remember the number.
Yep. We can go back and do that. I'm writing that down.
All right, 35, looks like one we had some questions on, so I think this one will need some group discussion. Develop coastal staging areas to address post-Cascadia disaster damage. Is this fit within mitigation? This is always a tricky one because it sounds like a great thing to do. Certainly no objection to doing it, but does it really fit in the mitigation realm?
Right.
I don't think it does.
Well, I could argue that. Rhiannon, do you want to argue that? Tracy wants to say something.
Jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy. I'll go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just gonna point out, Matt, I tend to agree with you. That might be, you could make it mitigation adjacent. But I'd struggled with that one when I read it. There are multiple other agencies, including OEM, who are developing plans for staging areas, and all of those plans fall under response, not mitigation at this point.
Yep.
Doubt we would have anything useful to add to that conversation through this process. They're well down the road on doing that.
Is there any mitigation that needs to be done in the areas that they're identifying for as staging areas?
That's actually, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Is once they get them developed, there might be mitigation actions there, but you've got agencies still firming up plans, so they don't have like sites you could identify. At least in some ways, there are some sites that are identified, but they're not all in a cohesive plan yet. So I don't know how far you want to take it now, with this being a 5-year plan, to say we could help with mitigation measures at staging bases once they're identified, but that seems, I don't know if that stretches too far.
So you don't think that they're going to have those shortly? Like within a year or two?
I would love to think so, because from a fuels planning perspective, I'd really like to know where those are going to be at, but I don't know what their timelines are. So
We remove this as a mitigation item, but just with the message going out there, it's not that we're hostile to this or that we would certainly support. And if anytime somebody's working on one of these staging areas, says, gosh, we need a levee or we need something, to mitigate a flood risk, or absolutely is something that could be added as a specific project into this plan. And Mary reminds me often that the plan can be updated. We don't have to wait 5 years. We have plan maintenance. If we have an important project that comes up, we can add it.
Yeah. Okay, so then we can go ahead and delete this one.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Speak up if anyone disagrees. 36. Request seismic and flood information from landlords.
Yeah, I didn't think that they would have that kind of information.
Well, actually, there's a part of DAS that does have flood information. I don't know about seismic.
Feels like more of an ongoing action. It's not an ongoing policy that should be part of a policy at DAS to just always be thinking about resilience on their buildings.
There's also somebody at DAS now who is working on downsizing our leased spaces and our owned spaces. And so that might factor into what they're doing.
Not hearing strong support for keeping this in here. I think this is something that.
Okay.
Well, it says that it doesn't meet the technically feasible. So how is that? How was this one of the ones you did, Trisha?
It is. I didn't think it was technically feasible because I didn't think that they would have seismic information. I didn't think that landlords would have that kind of information. That we're going to the wrong source. And it might be a duplication of previous actions where we said we wanted to inventory state-owned and leased buildings for their flood and seismic resilience. So it seems like it's kind of a duplication.
So you feel like we can delete it?
Yeah,
Okay, anybody object to that?
it doesn't seem like there's anything that's really niche about this particular action. To estimate, other than, okay, using this information to estimate loss and damage.
Yeah, which we're doing
More or
through
less
the
as
risk
part of our
assessment.
assessment, yeah. Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think.
Okay, so we can,
Right.
I think we can delete.
okay.
So 37 here, this one should be simple. Establish funding for climate change adaptation activities. What's there to talk about?
Yep, go for it.
Okay.
We will, yeah. Consistent with the governor's recommended budget, of course.
Yes.
Right.
Lobby the governor to recommend funding.
Use the DAS, so moving on to 38, DAS CFO data and investigation.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Matt, back on 37. This is establish funding for climate change adaptation activities, which implies state agencies. And then the sentence under the description says continue to fund Oregon Climate Change Research Institute. Maybe that should be separate.
I think it should be separate. Good, very good point.
I'm just going to suggest, though, that a mitigation action that's continue, that doesn't really belong on our list of actions here. If that's sort of an ongoing action. The OCRI funding, if that.
Mm. Hmm. I wish Erica's here. You want to weigh in on this one?
So I've seen something, we get funding, we currently receive funding every year, which is wonderful. There was something in the climate change, what document was it, Chris? There was a recommendation that was a little bit open-ended, but that was okay with me, to fully fund OCRI to provide more or less customized assistance. I'm not getting the words quite right.
Yes, that was in the framework, one of the recommendations in the framework.
And I'm wondering whether that is what was meant here.
More than just continuing, that sounds like increase.
Well, I think there was, back in 2020, I think there was a question about whether OCRI would be funded. I mean,
Well, so we're funded through the statewide, and there's always questions about what the legislature will continue to allocate to the statewide programs.
yeah, and I think that's where that came from in 2020.
But I still think it is a separate item from 37 summary statement.
Yes. And so continuing to fund would be like, I don't know, it sounds like an ongoing one, but it might be something that maybe we just change the language, fund.
Yeah.
And maybe we should take the statement straight from the framework, because that's already been worked out.
Bart, let's reuse it.
So
Right.
yeah, take out the part about moving it to ongoing.
Oh,
Okay.
And obviously we'll adjust the description, so we're not mentioning a 2023, and I don't think we'll want to talk about lobbying the governor's office. It's important to have funding for climate change adaptation.
Right. So we're gonna have to change the first statement, establish funding. Use a different word than establish, but maybe that's where continue comes from. Anyway, okay, we'll finesse this one.
We're gonna keep moving.
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Thirty-eight, we've kind of gone over this idea already.
This
So
one's a tough one. Okay, so Marion, I think that you had explained this to me and I sort of got it. This is about creating like a decision-making process based on best available data relating to seismic vulnerabilities. So
Right.
inventory, seismic and flood risk, inventory the risk to DAS owned or leased buildings in order to create an effective routine decision-making process for building occupancy, maintenance, and use. I think it's just a really complex and kind of roundabout
Way of
action.
saying it.
If anything, it could be reworded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I would start it with the second half of the sentence.
Yeah.
Create,
We're moving
you know,
pretty slowly, so I'm gonna
implement.
suggest that we not spend time trying to reword that as the whole group here, because we've got a lot more to get through.
Right. Just we'll return to it.
Okay,
Number is that?
Number 30.
38.
38, okay.
Thank you.
Reed, jump
Well,
in.
we're ahead of where we were last meeting.
All right. Yeah, just one point on this one. It seems like this is sort of a follow-on to knowing something about the buildings. So that one, I think you were looking to eliminate 36 was basically, it seems like a first step towards this action. If you kind of need to know what the building code, each one of these buildings was constructed under, has it been retrofitted? I think building owners would have that level of information, if not
Mhm.
like a specific study on the seismic vulnerability. So I think that it maybe leaving that previous one in as a precursor to number 38, then about how you use that information to mitigate might be worthwhile.
Well, we'd have to rework that one because it doesn't really matter where you get the information. The point is to use the information here in 38.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if the information isn't there
How
currently,
can you use it? Yeah.
then it seems like it's worth getting the information. Or maybe DAS already has that information and
Yeah, it's
sort of
unfortunate. Maybe we may need to check with DAS a little bit on this to see what they've already got or doing, especially as they are going through a major downsizing, because there's just not that many people in state office buildings anymore.
Right. Okay, point taken, Reed. Thank you.
So we just on the notes, checking with DAS would be one of our notes. All right. I'm going to suggest we've got, let's see, 39, 40, 41, all of those from our initial take at least seem to meet everything. So thank you, Erica, for your note on 40.
Is there anybody who disagrees with any of that?
Collaborate, pursue funding, pilot project. Okay.
So 42, we had a question from our initial. Collaborate on a workshop to increase the state's understanding of co-seismic landslide triggered tsunami. Huh.
That
Pretty
was my question
specific.
here of 39. Collaborate on a landslide workshop. Collaborate on a post-seismic landslide workshop. Seems very similar.
I can certainly agree.
And even in this description is our understanding of co-seismic landslides.
I would say let's drop 42 then. And
yeah, it could probably be combined. In my experience, those are kind of different communities that work on tsunami generation and then landslides on land. So it's the sort of thing that would benefit from having a separate meeting, but to minimize complications to it, they do sort of fit together. So
Well, we don't want to minimize complications just for the sake of this table. If they really belong separate, then we could just make that more clear.
yeah, I think the tsunami
Okay.
question is probably worth keeping
All
as
right.
a
Thank you for
separate
bringing
one.
it to seeing that word tsunami is very important in 42.
Yeah.
Okay.
So nope, not combining, and we'll go ahead and say they're all. I do wonder about why it's a workshop. I mean, I certainly understand the need to do further research on this, but I would have probably put a general, more mitigation item as like, improve our understanding and knowledge about this. But
Yeah, I don't have any information about why
why don't you put a
workshops
note, Tricia,
identified
then
there.
that we'll make it more general than just a workshop. I mean, I guess that is, at least you can check it off that you did a workshop, but.
Okay.
All right, do we want to try to answer the question on 45? Do you know anything about that one, Reed?
Or Rhiannon?
This was my question. I figured it was either for tsunami or coastal flooding.
Well, let's have a note maybe to follow up with someone who, oh, go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, I don't know about this one. It could be something that John Allen is
Let's follow up with,
promoting. But yeah, I'll shoot him a message and see if I hear anything back. But I don't know anything personally. It doesn't really sound like a tsunami thing to me. It sounds more like a
Okay.
more general storm and tides kind of thing, but it
no,
would be
I
relevant to
question how it's
tsunami as well.
mitigating if we don't know which hazard it's mitigating for.
Yeah.
I question that this would be mitigating. So, okay.
Yeah.
46 looked like it was good. 47, we have a comment.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's been done.
Oh, that should be late 2023.
Okay.
Um,
Does that mean we no longer need this as a separate action item?
well, not entirely.
Okay.
The characterization of drought history has been done. There is some information on effects. The main sources of information on effects have not been synthesized, but could be synthesized.
Would you be
It's
willing
feasible
to
to synthesize the available information. It's very much eye of the beholder. And I think that more could be done to improve data gathering. Well, more could be done to improve data gathering, both in terms of instrumentation across Central and Eastern Oregon, and in terms of gathering data on effects in the data gathering on effects also could be improved.
Mhm.
And those are not, that could be done by Oregon. It could be done by Oregon, ideally by, in my view, Oregon in partnership with other state agencies and federal agencies, because many of the impacts are not particular. They're not specific to the state, to our state. But yeah, some of it's been done, but I think there is room for enhancing the information that's available.
do you think you could kind of rephrase it so that it focuses on what's still to be done? We don't have to do that live right now.
Yes, I would be happy to do that if someone reminds me to do that.
Excellent.
Chris, can you make a note of
Yep,
that?
I'm doing that. Yep, 47, remind.
Thank
Yep.
you.
I'll make a note too.
Okay, it's on my list.
And 48 is
Hey,
related here, documenting the impacts of drought.
I think that's still necessary.
Okay. Thank you for the note about some of the data that's available, can be used for that. We got quite a few. I'm not going to go through and reading all the titles. Maybe let's just let them sit here for a moment. If anybody wants to bring up any, and this isn't your last chance too, if you later on realize you have some concerns about some of these or want to talk about them.
I did have a question about this one, with the updated hazards analysis. It's saying the last analysis was conducted in 1999. I thought that we had more updated products than that.
You'll have to ask Matt Williams about that. I can do
yeah,
that.
I
Especially
don't
with, I mean,
know.
getting probabilistic, that was huge.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head if we have anything statewide. We definitely have done things that are focused on particular areas of the state. Like there have been projects for the Portland metro area and recently Eugene, Springfield. But I don't believe that there's a recent statewide analysis. So I think that, you know, is more or less at least the outdated part is definitely accurate. And I don't know about 1999, but
Okay. Okay. Good context.
I think also we should check the 2020 plan itself. Okay, never mind. That's kind of circular.
Speak up, anybody, feel free to jump in if there's any of these you'd like to talk about.
Can you go back? You were going a little too fast for me.
For 54, we should note that some of this has been done in the Portland area for some of the hazards. I remember seeing a couple of studies on that, but I'm sure more is needed.
I'm wondering if
Right?
this one is done.
Which one?
55, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know.
It depends on whether they were funded through the seismic rehabilitation grant program in the last few years or not.
Well, I'll note that we'll just have a question.
Okay.
We can move on.
Hey there, this is Hannah with Odo. We have some feedback for 62.
Okay.
Yeah, so as far as we're aware, there isn't a lot of movement at the state at this point around creating a new regulatory authority. So our suggestion would be to change the framing of this mitigation action from specifically creating a new regulatory authority towards mitigate risks around fuel insecurity at the CEI hub. And, you know, something that's coming to mind for me as well is that we do have the fuel tank seismic stability program going on at DEQ, and that is, focused at the CEI hub in addition to other facilities. And so perhaps this is more of an ongoing action at this point around continuing to work on mitigating risks at the CEI hub.
Back in 2020, we didn't have a lot of those. So I think that in some ways
Exactly.
we might want to think of this as one that we succeeded in 2020. The plan said this is something that really needs to be addressed. The legislature did adopt something. Maybe it's not exactly what we describe here. Turns out they don't take their orders from our plan, but they made some progress. And DEQ is
I don't
working.
think we should lose sight of it. Like, I do think it is an ongoing issue, but yeah, maybe it's a move. Yeah.
So are you suggesting that we move this to ongoing and it's going to take more than 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, creating the plans, I think, is a big first step. And if someone I see Reed has his hand up, but also if someone from DEQ wants to speak to their program, I mean, that is a first step. That doesn't mean the work will be done. The planning to address the risks is different than mitigating the risks. So I think changing this action to frame it as mitigating risks and putting it on ongoing to not lose sight that the risks haven't been mitigated yet is important.
You want to jump in on this one?
Sorry, actually, I wanted to go back to the previous one, 61, but yeah, don't want to disrupt the conversation.
Well, let's finish 62 for a moment, then we'll jump back to 61. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Are most of those plans done? I think some of the various facility owners have been turning in their plans. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that, Matt, since we don't have that. I'm not aware of it. We don't have the program under our jurisdiction, but that would be a great thing to follow up and get DEQ's insight.
We'll ask DEQ. I think some of them have been turned in at least, and I think you're right. Then it's time to actually do the things that are in those mitigation plans.
Yeah, so it'd be great to get their perspective on this framing. Yep.
Should we move this one? Well, we'll talk to DEQ and potentially move this one, but then should we add something? Are there any of those mitigation actions that could potentially take place in the next 5 years?
I hope so. I think that's what we would want to have as an item here that says implement the mitigation actions that were identified in the plans from the owners.
That's a good suggestion.
Okay, so we'll add that.
All right, let's go back to 61.
So my comment is just about the note for 61 about LiDAR not being available. I mean, it's at this point, it is pretty extensive. We have about 78% of the state with published data, and the remaining part of southeastern Oregon is going to be released by the USGS in the coming months. So, within a year, essentially all of almost all of the state will be covered. There'll be some little gaps in central Oregon that will remain without public data for a couple years probably, but we're close to full coverage. So it's not really a limitation anymore.
Okay, great.
So now on to dealing with those crustal fault. Now that we know.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, 63. Yeah, a continuity of government plan, vitally important, but not really a mitigation action item. It doesn't really reduce your damages. It helps you respond.
I would agree with that.
Let's remove this one. '64 in the Bend region. Unless anybody knows if there's something that has happened in that area, I think we'd probably keep that on. '65. Update Dagami's Rapid Visual Survey Database on emergency service buildings. You know anything, Reed, if that is ongoing? We put everything on you.
Yeah, I again don't know a lot about this. I would say that it is not an ongoing action. by us, so it would need to be,
Let's
that's
leave it
something
there
that
then.
I've heard about, people being interested in, bringing back as something that we do, but we're not actively doing that right now.
Okay.
That's
Well, we
something
can-
that's included in the OSPAC update of the Oregon Resilience Plan.
That may
Seems like
be,
that's
yeah,
where it may have, okay, never mind.
certainly
Sorry,
might be listed as an action in that plan also, but it won't be completed through that, I don't think.
okay.
All right,
Okay, so this
60,
is, okay.
67. Border faults. Wait a minute, what kind of a border fault?
yeah, so this is something that is an issue, you know, basically you can look at a map of faults and there's all these faults in California that come up and stop right at the Oregon state line.
Miracle.
They're, we have less seismic hazards than they do right there. Anyway, so that is something that we are pursuing. We're going to propose a project to the USGS for funding to develop a new fault database for Oregon. So, you know, again, I don't know how it fits into this process, but it is something that's worth doing and that we are trying to do in the near future.
Okay, so I would suggest that this meets our goals because it or is consistent with the goals or would advance the goals. Because our goals definitely talk about increasing resilience and increasing our yeah, minimizing damage and things like that. The second one was, is it environmentally sound? Yes, it's not an
Study.
issue, right? Is it cost effective? Well, anything that does mitigation is technically cost effective by the return on investment, or almost anything. And is it technically feasible?
Yes, yeah. So I think with the LiDAR data kind of going along with the point a couple ago, it's definitely something that can be accomplished.
The next 5 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Reed. It's helpful to have that information. We'll
yeah,
go from
sure.
something that we didn't understand to something we can support.
Yeah, glad that I showed up.
69.
So are we.
Oh my, 100% state agency participation in the Great Oregon Shakeout.
Is it technically feasible in the next 5 years? I don't know what our percentage is now. Does anybody else?
Althea probably does.
I would keep it. It's an outreach issue.
Why don't we just make a note, check in with Althea on any phrasing or any progress to date. If we could say what we've achieved so far, it would be nice if we could say that since 2020, between 2020 and 2024, it has increased this much or something.
Right. Okay.
70, air conditioning for vulnerable. That seems like a good one. 71, map climate environmental data with demographic and health data. Is this done as the risk assessment, or is there something still another step to go?
I would say we've started, but we have not completed that.
And that won't be completed till 2027, you were saying?
Why 2027?
I thought that was when the EJ mapping was supposed to be done. Or the indicators or
Oh, yeah. The climate and health, um, OHA climate and health falls into it. It's sort of, it's ongoing.
should it be moved to the ongoing table or is this something that will actually be finished in the next 5 years?
I think it could be finished in the next 5 years as but it is something that will, in the following 5 years, will require updating, but let me just, talk to OHA about rewording that one.
Okay. I think it'd be nice to try to connect it to a mitigation. I mean, I love maps, I love data, but it doesn't really say like, what does mapping this data going to tell us? What are we going to do with it? I guess it
Right,
says for
yes.
targeted interventions and investment.
Yes, so let me talk to OHA about that, unless there's
Okay.
someone here. Okay, noted.
72, new LiDAR-based flood hazard maps. We should probably update the areas. Just make a note of that, or is that already?
Yeah, I would agree with that, again, there is data available for almost all the populated parts of the state at this point, so.
Just to see that sentence about LiDAR-based flood hazard maps are being produced for. And so either Hannah, our risk map coordinator, could tell us where it's currently going on.
Well, isn't Dogami doing some of that work as well? Christina doing some?
We do channel migration hazard mapping with Christina, but that is a little distinct from flood hazard. And I think there's some kind of regulatory things that limit what Dogami can do without, the certified engineers on our staff. So, but I do know that FEMA and their contractors are doing LiDAR-based flood mapping. So,
We'll just
Yeah.
update the list.
Yeah, I have that information's in the state strategy for risk map.
You're here.
I am here. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't notice you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does some of that work as well and contributes to FEMA's flood maps too.
Okay, great.
So is that staying on there or is that coming off? Right. I'm sorry.
I think it's staying on here.
Okay.
We're just
Yeah,
gonna
but just update the places.
Yeah.
We could debate whether it's an ongoing or it stays on here, but I just for ease, leave it on.
Okay.
Unless you feel differently, Paul.
No, it's good. I perked up when I heard LiDAR-based mapping.
Okay.
I've been kind of listening.
So Hannah, you want to say anything about 73?
Update streams with LiDAR-based flood mapping.
Yeah. I mean, this is an ongoing project, so yeah.
The difference between this one and the previous one.
Ooh, yeah. This one seems more specific towards streams. I don't know that we need to keep both on.
All right.
So I took this to mean detailed studies because this is FEMA risk map program. And the previous one, let's go up.
It was just flood maps, yeah.
Yeah, so let's go up.
Well,
And this says
wait a
produce
second.
new LiDAR-based flood hazard maps, which is not. I took that to be more base level engineering. It does say risk map in there, but I took this 72 to be more base level engineering and 73 to be like detailed studies. I think it probably could be worded a little bit clearer, but that's how I assumed it to be.
Can you go back to 73 for a second, Trisha? Okay, so the second part, I think that 300 miles is triggering a bell. It's ringing a bell for me, and it doesn't look like Christina's here right now. Is that right? Jed had identified as, I think it was those 300 miles of streams or something that he wanted to update. This was some time ago, obviously. And so I'm wondering.
Marshall Rivers has the information about the length of streams in upcoming studies and things like that.
Okay. So I just wondered if this was hanging on from a long time ago.
Well, we'll work with you, Hannah, to update these and probably combine them unless there's a real significant difference between the two. I understand that there's different kinds of flood mapping produced.
So hold on a second. You're glossing over. So the 72 is a detailed flood mapping based on LiDAR and like bridges and bathymetry, and that's I'm sorry, 73 is a detailed one, and that's going to be like Hannah's risk map program strategic plan. 72 is saying that the state has a need for base level engineering where areas where we don't have detailed flood mapping. That again, I think I those as two separate things. I wouldn't combine them. And
if you want two separate things, we could have it, but that's not saying it here. It talks about newly delineated flood zones based on new detailed studies.
Hold on, you may be right. Hold on, I could be wrong.
Tricia, if you put your cursor in the midpoint there and sort of double click, I think you can hide the the margins.
And maybe that's helpful. Maybe I misunderstood then.
Paul is right that there are still large areas of the state that do not have detailed studies.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we'd want to highlight those.
I guess and my point being is like, and I don't know, I mean, we definitely should have a risk map program. So that, I mean, putting that aside, the other part where we don't have the detailed studies, is it a state plan to say, well, we can approximate flood hazards by using LiDAR-based base level engineering? And is that an action that we want to have? Regardless, I mean, this may not really say it there, but is that an action we want to have?
Yeah.
I get
I
get to say something here. Yeah.
Do we, Paul? You tell me.
I think it's from my standpoint at the core. I mean, I'm going to defer to you for what you want to add, but from my standpoint at the core, it's nice to have a scalable plan to have something that's less detailed but still provides value in base level engineering, and then for the full Cadillac, you could get the detailed study, but you're not going to get the full Cadillac everywhere. So it's nice to have sort of a scalable approach to flood mapping, and you could put it into one if you want to, I guess. But it seems like that would confuse the overall objective. Like if we look at this 5 years from now, you know.
Let's hear from Murph.
Yeah, thank you. And doesn't this piggyback climate change? I mean, we're going to have to continue flood mapping as that goes on. We're going to see more and more changes in our environment that are going to require some types of identification. So this is something I think that should stay in place.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of places where we don't have good flood maps that just even on the current climate, we don't know fully, but you're right. It won't stop changing. Reed?
Okay. Whoops. Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up. I asked Christina about this one, and she noted that again, we don't do the flood specific risk map sort of studies ourselves, but we do that statement about Dogami supporting the efforts, including outreach and information, providing information to contractors and things is accurate. So she thought this was a relevant point. Thanks.
I wonder if Paul, if you could help kind of write the two actions that you want to see in there, one about the more general and then one about the detailed actual studies that get used for the NFIP.
Yeah, I could take a stab at it. I mean, I'm always.
That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I could take so 72 and 73. I mean, 73. I feel like, yeah, Hannah and I can work together. I mean, it looks like it's pretty well there. I'll take a look at it again. Okay. I don't know where the 300 comes from. That seems a little arbitrary. Yeah. Let's take a look at this. I remember Jed doing a lot of the base level engineering, and that may be where this comes from. You're right, Marianne. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, we could take a look at 72 and 73 and offer some comments and revise notes on that.
Absolutely.
Very helpful.
Inbox and get back to you guys.
Don't go away, any of you, because it looks like 74 is one
Yeah.
to talk about too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, say 74 says.
Yeah. I emailed Mark Stewart at USGS for 74 if we're done with 72 and
Please.
73 for now. And I wanted to get his take on the stream gauges because he gave some training to the Silver Jackets group, I think back in January,
Yeah, I can fucking
but
pull
more
that
so
up.
on the federal side of stream gauges. And I said, hey, we need to update
sure.
this item 74 in the mitigation action section because at the federal level, they're redesigning their priorities for stream gauges. So I didn't get much of a response back yet from
Yeah.
him. So I think we need to re-engage them to figure out what to do with 74 for state operated stream gauges.
Right. I agree, Deanna. That's going to take a little bit.
I would also suggest coordinating with OWRD because that's where this
Mhm.
real-time monitoring stream gauge installation item originally came from.
Right.
So does that like include mention of OWRD?
Does at the very end for integration.
Oh, it
Well,
does.
OWRD has a gauge system and USGS has a gauge system. And so any new systems ideally would be integrated with theirs.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
so we
you.
think it is technically.
I mean, the nice thing, I'm about to speak on things that I don't know super well, but any new gauges that there's the capacity to purchase, install, maintain, what have you, it would be great if they were linked up with whatever automatic feed system. There's already a backbone for if collection of those data is automated, that it feeds into the existing infrastructure. So basically the access stream of the data and the QA, QC and all of that is integrated with a system that already exists. So that now you're not running 3 systems in parallel, but you have gauges maybe purchased and maintained by group X, but they're part of the infrastructure set up by group Y previously.
All right. Well, our flood people will look into this and bring us some more information.
Okay.
Perfect.
75.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem there. We'll just know what climate change is going to do to floods.
This climate change looks pretty good. I don't know who wrote it, but I like how it's written.
Keep the note
your
there about the
comment, Erica?
challenge.
Yeah, in the notes, it's my comment.
Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, it's not just amount. I mean, I think what's there is accurate. What's in the column with lots of words is accurate. But in addition to that, it's not just the amount of precipitation, but the intensity of precipitation. So precipitation potentially becoming flashier, greater amounts in a short period of time. So precipitation even could decrease, but you could still have greater flood risk because precipitation becomes flashier. So it's basically discriminating between amount and intensity. And then whenever we've dealt with flooding, there's been this complication of do you have regulated or unregulated waterways? And that becomes a consideration pretty rapidly. So basically, my understanding is that a lot of people are working on flooding, but there's a lot to it because rivers don't flow. I mean, waterways don't flow unimpeded, and that both the intensity and the amount of precipitation and the type of precipitation, all of that matters.
Warnings, I think more than ever. That's why we need Action 75 on here. Keep working on it.
Yeah, just
76.
real quick on 75, we are inserting a section for climate change in the flood hazard chapter.
Oh, good.
So that
Is
make
Erica
that connection.
involved in that?
Make that connection there. Christina Appleby.
Okay, so All right, we'll make sure that Erica has a chance to review what you
Okay.
did.
Cool.
76, the CRS. If you have any input on that one, Deanna, why don't you bring that to us later? I don't think we need to go over it right now, but it sounds like a good goal to keep adding to the CRS, whether we can do it or whether we meet the goal every time or not. Good goal to continue. 77, update a program. Has it been updated or is this an on continued need to be updated?
I think this is an OWRD program.
Yeah,
Probably.
to answer your question though, of should this be moved to ongoing?
So let's check with water resources.
Oh, didn't USGS just update this information? Like bulletin 17B has now been superseded by something else?
17C.
Yeah.
And I think what needs to happen on this one is there's an Eastern Oregon, the regression for peak discharge is by region. So I think it's checking in with USGS and OWRD to see if the regional peak discharge estimation has been updated. And if there's a region that hasn't been updated, maybe be more specific.
Yeah.
Sorry, I probably said Tricia. That didn't help you.
No, it's okay. What reasons that? Okay.
All right, 79, no real questions there. Good goal.
Okay, 80 is a good one.
80, the high arc data. Up.
I'm going to take a moment with this one.
Which one?
It's 80.
So I think where we've succeeded here is we've put high watermark signs in Albany, although I don't think it's there anymore. I think we put a couple of others in Salem and other places. So I guess it's
Some
a
on the
good
boat
one.
ramp in Kaiser.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a good one to have. I don't see that the description is wrong.
Okay, so is collecting high watermark data separate from installing high watermark signs, or are those things that are done together?
That you read my mind. That's where I was. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I read that. I was excited initially because I was like, I think we should be promoting the collection of high watermarks and then communicating them. Maybe is that two separate actions?
Probably is. And
I think so,
I
yeah.
think it might be the communication one is probably easier to justify as a mitigation action. The collecting them, it's useful, but it doesn't by itself mitigate things.
What we could do, because you can't have a high watermark sign without high watermark data. You could put in here something to the effect of collecting high watermark signs support high watermark. I'm sorry, collecting high watermark data to support the distribution of high watermark signs.
Yeah.
And while it's not its own action, it's sort of intrinsic to having signs.
Other thing we could
have
do.
lots of historic high watermark data available for which there's no sign out there, right?
No, I mean not a lot, I wouldn't say,
Oh,
because
okay.
because it in order to have a sign, you sort of have to have an elevation. And while we have a lot of intuitive knowledge about high watermarks, I think there's a finite amount of data points that are legitimate enough to have a sign.
So
I
have a question here. If we go back to our goals, collecting high watermark data would be a first step in doing what to mitigate floods. And second, installing high watermark signs is a way to communicate risk to the public. So I would start this one, I think, with installing the high watermark signs
Okay.
as a way to communicate risk, but that's dependent, like you could say based on high watermark collection, high watermark data collection. And then the collecting high watermarks data, couldn't that be an ongoing?
Yeah.
So we could move the collect high watermark part to ongoing, and then here we could put install high watermark signs based on high watermark data to raise awareness of risk, flood risk. Does that sound like a way to go, or?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
All right. Capture some notes on that. Good. 81, encouraging flood insurance. Like it. I don't know whether we're actually doing that, Deanna, but it sounds like a good idea, or maybe it's somebody else who does it. It doesn't necessarily be the NFIP group.
Yeah, this might be something we revise.
All right, well, if you want to send some revised language, that would be
Okay.
fine.
Sure. Yep.
Now we've got some that have some DS numbers with them, DS2.
Dam safety.
Okay.
So these were not prioritized
These were
with,
added during the maintenance phase.
no, they were
Oh.
in, but they were not prioritized with the rest of the mitigation actions because they are kind of separate
Okay.
hazard.
Do we have anybody from that program here today?
Doesn't look like it.
All right, well, let's move on then. We
Well,
can check
wait,
in with them.
I did check in with Tony.
Oh,
This is
good.
Deanna, and I think that there's like a number of these that have Senate Bill 1537 that might need to be revised.
Mm.
And I'm not sure I got an answer back from Tony yet on these.
Okay.
So
let's coordinate
I
later.
I wanted to just highlight with him, hey, I think these needed updating or revising or eliminating or something.
Appreciate you doing that, Deanna.
And
Very helpful.
Tony Janasek works at Water Resources Department.
Okay, so we can
So for
probably
those of you-
move past all of these and wait for him to give comment.
Yep.
Yeah, I think his initial comment was asking something about the state resiliency officer, and I was lost. I was like,
Okay. Well, Deanna,
I
if you can
don't.
follow up with those, that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay, will
Yeah, and
do.
include me because I have it on my calendar that I need to meet with him anyway.
Will do.
Thank you.
83. We love it when Dagami produces landside susceptibility maps. Very nice. Maybe get a little update. I don't know if we want to update where they have. No, we don't necessarily need to.
Yeah, I think this is a good thing to keep on.
Yep.
And if you do want some more information about where we've completed things and where we are targeting for the future, we could definitely track that down.
Yep, that would be
Bill
great.
Burns is the best point of contact there, but feel free to let me know. Also,
Sorry, I didn't quite catch it. Who did you say is the best?
Bill Burns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Moving along. Ooh, I think this one, 84.99, we probably can say we are done. We've done several of these where we're in the middle of them. Maybe we're not quite done, I guess, actually. Well along the way.
Oh, but these aren't complete.
No, actually,
Not
we're
quite.
meeting today to discuss. It's taking a little longer and we're adjusting, but this is DLCD and Dagami working together on these. So we should note by next September, they might be, by the time we actually adopt this plan. We'll check
There's
with
another
Cynthia.
suggestion there about allocating post-fire landslide risk reduction technical assistance dollars. Is somebody suggesting another action like that that could be done through our technical assistance grant.
Certainly fits in. And probably we keep this on here because unfortunately there are continued wildfires. So there's continued need for monitoring or for post-fire debris flow studies.
We can ask Bill if that's something he's planning to continue to do, or if he's not applying for money for that.
All right.
Yeah, as far as I know, Bill has ongoing interest there. So again, it's going to be driven by where wildfires happen and where communities are, and community interest and needs for having our help with mapping and characterizing the hazard.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Looks like a lot of these Bill has weighed in on, unless there's any of these that somebody wants to bring up today.
Okay. 86 and 93.
I think that's related to the scripts thing that he wants to do.
I'm thinking about joining 86 and 93 should evaluate the impact of climate change on landslides be separate from collaborating on the landslide workshop? Or should we just say, I'll just daylight my bias here is to split rather than lump so that we can check things off more easily. Because if we do some work to evaluate the impact of climate change on landslides, but we never get to a workshop, we can never check this one off. But I'm wondering if we write it more generally, again, that's a danger because we want to be specific, but if we maybe, I don't know, if Bill is looking for funding for the workshop, then we probably want to have it separately.
I would vote for separating them as well.
Okay.
We can do that.
Because of what you just said, it makes it easier to check off, and we don't want studies just languishing on shelves.
It also makes it easier to apply for funding. Okay. Looking at 88, we used to have two of these. I think we used to have one for west of the Cascades and one for east of the Cascades.
I talked to Bill about this one.
Okay.
I think the notes are in there.
Oh, use LiDAR to assess landslide hazards along right of ways.
Yes, but then we had a question, we did not know the answer about whether ODOT's climate change risk assessment addressed this question.
Okay.
Yeah, as I understand it, ODOT has collected like truck-based LiDAR along all the major roads and highways. And so I don't know to what extent that's being used to, specifically assess landslide hazard. I don't think that Bill or anyone at Dogami has the data, but ODOT does. So
Correct. Yes,
Let's ask
ODOT
ODOT.
does have a GIS site that ranks areas for landslide potential along right of ways, but I don't think that was done in collaboration with ODOT. I mean, with Dogami.
right. Yeah.
We'll make a note to check with ODOT on this one. It's a good chance they've done it. Sounds like that we can
Yes.
mark this as done. I know they're very concerned about landslides along their highways there. And 90, it might be an interesting way. It may be that it has been done, but keep it on there because there are still vulnerable corridors. So it would make sense to
Exactly.
keep that on
So
there.
it's evaluating them is one thing and mitigating them is a different project.
Mm-hmm.
And their risk assessment does have priority corridors to mitigate. So we do need to check with them.
Okay.
All right. 92, evaluate sediment impacts to organs, water, resources.
And I talked to Bill about that, and he said that that is on his radar and something he wants to do.
I imagine that
technically
Water
feasible?
Resources is working on it too.
Yeah.
Point. Go ahead, Chris.
According to him, yeah.
According to him, yes, what?
It's technically feasible.
Oh, okay. What interest would ODFW have in this, Nancy?
Good question. we have a water quality program, but typically the focus is on water quantity, not quality. And they are trying to produce, it's very complicated, but they're trying to produce a map of the priority waterways for salmon. But we are not the water quality expert by any means. We're more trying to focus on ensuring there's water quantity left for fish and wildlife.
Okay. Mike?
One thing that I've seen in my work a lot is sedimentation, which causes culverts on highways and county or federal to flood. So you might want to get ODOT involved on that one.
Yep. This is definitely a multi-agency issue.
But the mitigation
yeah.
action itself is good. It's written okay.
I think so, yeah, because we're in the very beginning stages of trying to figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah, one other agency it might be worth wrapping in here is ODF. The part of the private forest accords legislation was looking at potential stream or sediment input to streams from landslides on private forestry lands and working on management practices to minimize that as with a focus on fish habitat and water quality for fish. So I think there was some ODFW collaboration on that project. and is kind of relevant to this question.
Thank you.
Our role
Now,
in that is
also
more,
then,
What?
ODF and W's role in that is
I-
again related to fish presence mapping stuff, not water quality.
Okay, yeah. So I think that the ODF, that forestry was handling that kind of the sediment side of it, and then ODFW is supplying the fish presence, what streams are relevant. But so I'm not really sure where that project stands, but it would be something that would be worth considering in any future work.
I agree. The PFA is a really big deal, and it regulates most of the private forests now. So, yeah.
I think ODF also is, at least in some cases, being asked questions about potential changes in erosion as a result of burning piles or any other, burning piles or prescribed burning or whatever they're calling lighting stuff on fire. Which, I mean, it just varies depending on the context, but I think that is part of what's being questioned in terms of harvest and prescribed fire policies.
It's sort of a fascinating interconnected world. We're getting quite a ways away from like natural hazards mitigation into a lot of environmental and Mike, you had something?
another group related to sedimentation would be ODA, because, with dealing with a riparian area in farmland, you get a lot of sedimentation, which can then affect those culverts that I was talking about, or urban areas downstream. So again, it's kind of the environmental impact from management that then causes the natural hazard risk.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds like a good one to keep on there. And if Bill's got that. 94 is about tsunami evacuation. Unless somebody has a reason not to keep that on there. Continuing to harden and improve evacuation routes. Good.
Yeah.
102. How has this perhaps been done, or is this something that's still out there about LiDAR-based geologic mapping around 2 volcanoes?
I didn't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, as far as I know, there may be some ongoing mapping by the USGS. So I guess, yeah, no, it's Newberry and Mount Hood.
Okay.
It seems like these are things that are happening anyway. So I guess it'll tick off the list. In terms of things that Dogami is doing, there's no specific plans in the next few years to map around Cascade volcanoes, as far as I know. So
We can delete that one.
Okay.
Or did we say it was in progress and would be complete by the next update? Is that what you were suggesting, Reed?
yeah, I mean, I know, for example, the Newberry volcano map is something that's been worked on for decades now, and
Okay.
it's in the stages of publication somewhere. So
Well, that sounds pretty much, I mean, this plan comes out in September 2025. By then it should be published.
I am guessing so. I mean, the USGS publication process can be pretty slow moving, but it's definitely churning through the system if it's not already out.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say, yeah, let's go ahead and take these off our list. They're essentially done.
It doesn't sound like we did it, though. It sounds like this is something that USGS is doing, and it's not even a state mitigation action.
That would be my feeling, yeah. So
Okay,
So it
so
comes off
let's
the
just
list.
delete it. Yeah.
Okay.
And if somebody comes up with another volcano that would be top on the list that really should get mapped, we could put a separate item on that. But Reed, unless you know of one that you think would be a high priority to map.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that, so I guess one other point is on the Mount Hood map, I think that one does involve some Dogami mapping as well as USGS. So there's definitely a collaboration there with the state, but again, I think that is at this point being led by the USGS. So it's less of a state.
It doesn't sound like it needs to be
thing.
on our list of mitigation actions.
Could the
Yeah.
mitigation action be to collaborate with USGS on volcano mapping?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a good way.
Would that
Maybe
be,
as an ongoing item.
that's what I
unless
was
we're-
gonna say.
Unless we have a specific volcano that we wanted to say, we're worried about this one. It's not well
Gotcha.
mapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, 105. Add climate change modeling into Oregon Wildfire Risk Explorer.
Oh,
A whole
This
lot
one
of
is
stuff
really
to add here.
complicated.
yeah, this has to, we have to have a discussion with, ODF on this.
All right, let's put that off. Let's not try to do that right here.
Yep. Again, this is related to the wildfire mapping, hazard mapping. Now, it wasn't in 2020, but I think we need to have a conversation with the wildfire mapping program about that.
About 106? About 105?
106. 106. Yeah. It needs to be substantially updated or deleted.
Why don't we, I mean, hopefully we just say it's complete.
Well, it's not complete. I mean,
Okay.
they're doing the map, but they haven't done the education, and
Okay.
it's all wrapped up in the legislation, and
All
I think
right.
we need to have some conversations about these two.
Let's do that with them.
Yep.
I can see your point that once the map has been published, is a good time that DFR, I'm sure, will be doing a big outreach push.
It's required in the legislation.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, 107. Establish a program for studying winter storms and their impacts. Is Erica still here?
we need to do that.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we do. Okay. Is that something that would be led maybe by the Climate Service?
We could do, I mean, the snow stations, oof, that is not necessarily the number. Yes, I mean, I'll just say yes, although I don't know that snow accumulation tracking stations are the way that would be the first way that we would go about it.
Okay, well, that was a recommendation from the last person who was in charge of the winter storm chapter, who was not a meteorologist.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, we could develop a program like that if we had support. Yeah, I'm happy to do a little bit of revision of the third column about what would need to be done.
Sure. That would be helpful.
Winter storms, do you think, okay, so in that case, we're talking about snowstorms, because I mean, winter storms is pretty comprehensive. Is this intended to get at snow as opposed to rain?
No, and ice, not wind, because wind is in the windstorms chapter.
Ooh,
Yeah,
But that could be changed. That was a division that was made years and years ago.
Okay.
is to-
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that could be changed, but we don't have the data that we need to have a decent chapter on winter storms, and the same thing for windstorms, really. But
Let's talk about that in a little bit more detail separately if you have a chance,
Sure.
but I can work on this in the meantime.
Okay, great.
And then I recall from the last time that there was a desire to have more snow-tell sites.
Yes, and there's another, that was what this was really talking about.
But
That's what I
that's very
thought.
different.
Yeah.
'Cause
And
that's
And
really
there's
helping you
different,
with
yes.
drought, right? That's not helping you with the winter storm.
Well, snow-tell, it would tell you, well, not winter storm, but
Winter
I
floods.
guess it's drought, but it's, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think and I don't know if that's the NRCS is looking at
Yes.
revamping the Snowtel network to incorporate different elevations and locations.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why is because the volume of water that's captured in the snow can melt suddenly, which is attributed to the most significant flooding that we've had in Oregon in
Sure.
the past.
But that's still, I
So-
mean, when it was winter storm snow, we're worried about snow that's hitting on the valley floor or on urban areas and developed areas, not
Right.
the large stretches
True.
of mountains where it's accumulating over the winter. So it's a
And
very
that's what they're
different.
talking about adding is the low level
Okay.
snow-tail sites. And I don't know how far along they are in considering that, but they're looking to revamp a snow-tail site instrumentation makeup to be more applicable to a low-lying area, a lower elevation than they normally consider.
That's not a
another,
state mitigation action.
But that's not a state mitigation action, exactly.
It
Yeah.
does appear down here at the bottom, though.
yes, thank
Someone
you.
added it.
Oh, I
Sorry,
saw it somewhere.
Marianne. Someone added this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
add snow-tell gauges in Zigzag near Mount Hood and in Douglas County.
And I think
Sounds
it's
like
this. I think it's GAGES, right? Gauges.
No, it's GAU.
It depends on which dictionary you look at.
Not get into that one today.
Well, I found some consistency between dictionaries, but we can decide later.
Let's see if we can wrap up. I think we've wrapped up all of the numbered.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's one more to go.
107.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what we were just talking about. So Erica's going to come up with some language
Right.
about
So now,
because, yeah.
so now we're on the lettered ones, which are ones that people have suggested and we've collected over time. And we have a little, just under 10 minutes left. Can we get through some of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be more useful if we could just, let's see, does anybody have any burning desire to add another item to this list? I'd like to get that now so that we can
Right,
start some
thank you.
researching on that and background.
Yeah, Matt, we have a, oh, sorry, maybe some.
Hannah has the floor.
Okay,
go ahead.
do you want me to drop them in the chat? Would that be most helpful?
Sure,
That
then
would
we
be
can cut
great.
and paste, yeah.
Okay. And I was gonna
Okay.
ask, something that we didn't think about when doing these is whether or not they're categorized as ongoing or priority. So I will drop them in the chat. I'm gonna leave that as a caveat with a question to check my understanding. Priority is something that we think will be achieved within 5 years, correct? And ongoing is something that we think will be longer than that?
Ongoing are the things that we do as a matter of course in our day-to-day work that we want to get credit for.
Okay.
We want FEMA to see that we're doing more than just what's on our list of
Mhm.
things we would like to do.
Okay.
And the things that we would like to do need to meet the criteria we have on the handout that are, whether they're consistent with, driven by the goals, whether they're environmentally sound, cost-effective, and technically feasible and specific enough, or could be made specific enough, whether they're measurable, whether we have the technically feasible, I'm just kind of paraphrasing here, is whether we have the expertise and resources to get them done within 5 years.
Okay, great.
Main difference, I think, is usually these are projects on this list, things that could be distinct, could be done. The programs are things that probably go on forever.
Okay.
Mhm.
And are we gonna go over the ongoing actions at some point, or is that not a focus for this group?
It's not really going to be a focus. We don't have enough time this time. So we're
Okay.
going to be focusing on these priority ones And we'll be including the ongoing ones in the plan, but we're going to focus on the priority ones and we're going to prioritize the priority ones, but not the ongoing ones.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have input on those. On the ongoing, we're certainly open to the input. We just wouldn't necessarily take time at a meeting with all of us together to go over them. But
Okay, great. Yeah, one of ours kind of relates is similar to an ongoing one, so I'll just make note of that. It might be a discrete priority action though.
Okay. And we can always check back with you if we have questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
so what are the new ones you want to add?
I'm going to drop them in the chat. I think that will be easiest.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and Murph had one from earlier. Oh,
I
and
have
he's back. Oh,
well, I'll let you do Murph's and then I'll chime in.
well, go ahead, Paul, because Murph isn't answering right now.
Okay. I don't know if this is, I want to get people, oh, Murphy, you there?
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I wanted to get your input on this, or the team's input on this. So over the past couple of years, the we've been working a lot with OWRD and I forget the whole group, but on the forecast informed reservoir operations, and looking at changing operations to better predict floods. And the Center for Western Weather and Weather Extremes down in California has developed a system for classifying atmospheric rivers that kind of supplements the forecast of rainfall so that we can get a better understanding of upcoming flood risks. So for example, if we have, say, 3 inches of rain coming in, okay, well, what does it mean? Well, 3 inches of rain with an atmospheric river of AR4 has a certain meaningful outcome, and AR4 has a criteria tied to it. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because what I could see is using that classification to help communities understand, and it's really intended for communities. It's kind of, it takes a lot of technical data down to just like a classification system and alerts. And so I'm sort of wondering whether we could use that as a education piece to help communities keep track of potential flooding that is in the forecasted, in the horizon. I didn't want to add it without getting input on what you all think about that.
Sounds great to me.
Does it?
It sounds like in many ways it's kind of a response oriented. It's something that you would do when you're seeing this storm on your weather maps and saying, oh, this is a big storm, or oh, it's a medium storm.
That's right.
True.
Well,
And a timing
I see it as mitigation also because it's alerting people to, it's teaching people about the hazards that they face, and then they'll be able to prepare themselves better.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe the
and I
action
can
is like use the classification system to inform people about sort of an early warning.
Right.
Good. Let's at least get it captured. We can discuss it further. It's possible it doesn't make it in, but it sounds reasonably good to me.
Okay. And Deanna and our team got to go through this again, so maybe I'll flesh it out a little bit more and just kind of write a little bit better description, like more than we could do
helpful. Yeah.
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 And then the other thing I was kind of generally speaking, as we go through these action items, and some of the things that we've talked about is within the Silver Jackets group is developing kind of extra training material for floodplain managers to help this, the cycle of floodplain managers, to help new floodplain managers understand the gamut of what they're supposed to do. So that's kind of training material. And then the other things like tabletop exercises. I'm not sure where those would go. We had that as a Silver Jacket, so I can see that sort of being encapsulated in the Silver Jackets action item. But I don't know if you would want to separate out some of these things.
Capture them for now. I would say in some cases those are sort of tenuous connection to mitigation. A tabletop exercise is not usually mitigation, but better to capture them for now.
Okay, capture those. Okay, when we get together, we'll go through that and try to decide what we want to capture.
I know I hate to be bureaucratic, like we are only going to talk about mitigation, but this is a mitigation.
That's what this is. That's no problem.
Murph, you had some things to throw in here, so we at least get them on our brainstorm list.
Oh boy, I could go on and on, but anyway, especially with Paul's subject. But anyway, what I had brought up earlier was communication that was brought up during our last wildfire partnership meeting this week. And it's an ongoing issue. It's who has the responsibility of cell towers and what communication forms are we going to depend upon on whether it's an evacuation notice of something, or how do we communicate with our vulnerable groups during these very disaster-prone times. So then it asks the question, is a cell phone a luxury or a necessity? And if it's a necessity, what kind of responsibility does that put on a cell tower owner? Do they have to stock enough fuel during a public safety power shutoff?
I think we could kind of capture this as, doing mitigation actions on our communication system so that it holds up better during a disaster.
Yes, because we were talking, okay, so now we lean on ham radio, or do push communications come through when cell towers are down, and what are the limits of that?
Right. Hey, I want to make sure we get a chance to get their ideas on here. So let's not go too deep into this one now. It's a good one.
Yep.
I'd like to riff off something that Murph is worried about, and that is the public power shutoffs, public safety power shutoffs.
Yeah.
I tried to find more information about that, and it does not exist. And it would be very helpful to know, do some vulnerability assessments to know what is affected by a public safety power shutoff, ranging from cell towers to medical equipment. And places that might not have generation capacity.
For these ideas, I'm going to suggest I don't know if Lisa or someone from the PUC is on the call, but they would definitely be a great entity to talk to, excuse me, for communication infrastructure, also for public power safety shutoffs. And one of the actions I dropped in the chat is thinking about backup power for critical public service facilities. Communications infrastructure is definitely part of that, thinking about other critical infrastructure that might be getting shut off for whatever the reason, then energy disruption happens. So just want to flag that hopefully that's also getting at some of these concerns that are being raised in terms of really thinking through our backup power systems.
Exactly.
It looks like April Brewer is on. April, did you get unmuted?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I'm on my phone. So I guess in regards to the PSPS stuff, we could definitely provide information on that if there is specific questions. My apologies, I'm sort of multitasking right now, so I kind of heard PSPS come up and was trying to unmute. I don't know if there's a specific question right now on it, but I'm happy to provide more information on that.
Yeah, we're just kind of brainstorming some ideas right now that may turn into new mitigation actions. So it's good to know that you're available for that.
Yeah, we have some defined regulation and requirements from the utilities, but we've worked on messaging to try to communicate with EventBridge with Everbridge to determine what the stated communication would be to the public around PSPSs. So that's one thing that at least we've been able to try to kind of control and work on internally, but certainly April, reach out to me if you guys have more questions on that. I'm happy to help.
Okay. Hannah, was there anything else we've captured what you put into the chat, so we can put those in there as potential new items. And we
Great,
are
yeah.
at 3:01, so I think we're wrapping up here, and we will come back at a future meeting on these.
Okay, we have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And we'll continue with this.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Been a very productive meeting. Good
Thank
to
you
have
for
you here on a Friday
facilitating
afternoon.
that.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Marion, oh, let's stop the recording.
What?
Let's stop the recording.
Oh, of course. Okay.